I appreciate Buzz taking care of all the stuff in the front. I wasn't about to go down those stairs 2 or 3 times. Oh. I'm going to sit. So I'm not sure I can stand for an hour and a half. Some years ago, you'll remember that George Latimer was our interim minister, and he left in the summer to take care of his wife, Kathy. And the elders decided to try and fill the pulpit until the search committee found us a new minister. I was asked to do that once. I didn't know how to prepare a message of any sort, so I went to the internet, and I found one. Written by a Baptist minister, and I presented it. When I got through, I went to the back, shaking everybody's hand. One lady came up to me and she said, "Boy, you don't pull any punches, do you?" So I guess that time has been forgotten, and I was asked to bring the message today. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick little story. Tony and I left Central Christian Church 24 years ago, I guess it was, something like that, maybe longer. And we attended a Methodist church in our neighborhood because we knew a lot of the people there. They were friends. And one Sunday, that church exchanged ministers with a black church. And that minister got up there, and before he started preaching, he said, "I'm going to tell you 2 things. I'm used to hearing a few amen, amen." He said that if I talk a little too long, I'll hear a "bring it on home now, bring it on home." I don't expect to hear that today. You won't have to. The topic of today's lesson is what if. Today's going to be different. It's not going to be a Bible story. We're going to visit a program most of us watch every weekday at 5:30. It's ABC World News with David Muir. But filling in for David Muir today will be Pete Bratlie. Oh, okay. Melissa helped me out with these slides. I wasn't familiar with that one. As you can see, David Muir couldn't be here. So I wore a black suit, white shirt, black tie, much like he does every day. And this morning we're going to talk about a young man named Jesus who was from Nazareth. He's in his early 30s. This report covers the last 3 years of his life. He accomplished many extraordinary things, and I'll be telling you about them. The first one is a wedding celebration. I can turn my paper. He was invited to a wedding celebration in Cana, which is a small town just north of Nazareth. Now, in order to be invited to a Jewish wedding, you typically have to be family for the wedding itself. But for the reception, the celebration afterwards includes friends. In addition to Jesus being invited, his mother Mary was invited. So that makes us believe that it was a family wedding. In addition, Jesus had 12 friends who were invited to go with him. We assume they were college buddies or frat friends or something. We'll just call them friends. On the 3rd day of the wedding celebration, Mary, his mother, went to him and said, "Son, they've run out of wine." He said, "Mom, you know I'm not ready yet." Mary said, "Well, do what you can." So he got his friends to bring him 6 vases that were 20 to 30 gallons each. He said, "Fill them with water," which they did. He stood over them for a short period and said, "Take a cup to the master of ceremonies," which they did. The master of ceremonies tasted it and said to the bridegroom, "Normally you serve the good wine at the beginning of the wedding and the lesser wine as the days go by. But now you've served the best at the last." Now let's see what that 30-year-old Jewish boy did. He converted the water into wine, about 120 gallons. That's a lot of wine. In the United States, that'd be about 600 bottles. Even I don't have that much. The next incident in this report deals with a time when he was preaching in the synagogue, and there was a man there who was obviously possessed. Jesus said sternly, "Come out of him." The man shook violently, and the clean spirit came out of him. Next, he was standing by the lake of, and I'm not sure I can pronounce this properly, Gennesaret. Close. Yeah. You don't have. We have at least one ordained minister here. So, and the fishermen were complaining about a small catch. He said, "Well, take me out in the deep water, and I'll show you how." They did, and caught so many fish that it almost swamped the boat. Then they returned to the shore and told another boat captain where to go for a good catch. Now, is this 30-year-old man a vintner? Somebody who cast out demons and an experienced fisherman? Now I'm going to mention a few other stories, but we won't have time to go into them with a full report. When Jesus arrives at Peter's home, Peter's mother-in-law, we assume he's married, was in bed with a high fever. Jesus touched her, and the fever left. Next, a leper approached him and said, if you want to, you can heal me. Jesus touched the man and said, I want you to be healed. And instantly, the leprosy disappeared. Jesus went to Capernaum. Come on, I got that one. And a Roman captain came and pled with him to come and heal his servant boy who was in bed paralyzed. And Jesus said, go home. What you have asked for has happened. Then he was in the synagogue and he discussed healing on the Sabbath with a group of Jewish leaders. They were trying to catch him so he could be arrested. There was a man there with a withered hand. Jesus said, stretch out your arm. The man did, and his withered hand was cured. When he was in Nain with his friends in a large crowd, he saw a funeral procession coming out of the gate, carrying the only son of a widow. Jesus said, don't cry, and brought the man back to life. Another incident in this report says that his friend took him out in a boat and a violent storm came up. Jesus was asleep. His friend woke him. He got up and stopped the storm, and his friend said, who is this guy? Next, he was approached by a synagogue leader who pled with him to come to his home because his daughter was dying. But as he got there, he was told, never mind, she's dead. He said, no, she's just sleeping. He said, my child, get up. And she did. Once again, he must have been practicing some sort of medicine. Jesus and his friends went to a town called Bethsaida, and the crowds followed him. He spoke to the crowds much like a revival, healed several people, and late that afternoon, his friends came to him and said, send the crowds home so they can get something to eat. Jesus said, separate them into 50 people, 50 men group, plus women and children. That'd be 100 groups of people. The friends did, and then he found out that all his friends could find to eat were 5 hamburgers and 2 orders of French fries. He took the food, looked to heaven, blessed it, and broke the food into pieces. They fed the 5,000 men and women and children, and then went about them and filled 12 baskets of leftovers. How does one person do that? Next, we're told that Jesus told his friends to go on ahead of him in the boat. Then he went up the mountainside and prayed. Now the friends were a considerable distance out in the water when he finished. Jesus walked out to them. His friends were terrified. He said, take courage, don't be afraid. One of his friends, Peter, asked if he could walk on the water and meet him, and Jesus said, come on. Peter started to sink. Please save me, which Jesus did. Now we have another report of a crowd. He had been addressing for 3 days. Jesus was concerned that after 3 days they might be getting hungry. This time, he fed the 4,000 men, plus women and children, with a few hamburgers and French fries. And then his friends collected 7 baskets of leftovers. Here's one of the best. Shortly after that, this young man, Jesus, cured a man's blindness by spitting in his eyes. Now, besides all the other medical cures he has passed out, he cures this man. He didn't extract any cataracts. He just spit in his eyes. Now, editorial comment, I'll bet Dr. Shelby would like to know how to do that. Again, I'm going to only mention a few things about some of these other stories. He was up on a high hill with three buddies, Peter, James, and John. When he came down, a man came to him and asked him to cure his mentally deranged son. Jesus told the demon that possessed the boy to leave, and the boy was well. Then another demon-possessed man who was blind and mute was brought to him. He healed him so he could see and talk. He was teaching in the synagogue, and he saw a seriously handicapped woman who was bent over, much like Chief Green was a few years ago, I guess. And he saw us, and he said, "Woman, you are healed of your sickness." She was. Upon his way to Jerusalem, he was approached by 10 lepers, and they cried out, "Have mercy on us." He said, "Go to the Jewish priest and show him that you were healed." And they were. His mother Mary's brother Lazarus was very sick. His mother and his aunt sent for him. He waited for 2 days before he started to go to Bethany, where they were located. When he got there, Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. His Aunt Martha said, he probably didn't smell very good. But Jesus went to the tomb and shouted, "Lazarus, come out." Lazarus came out. And then we're told that he restored the sight to Bartimaeus in Jericho and another blind man. Jesus heard them cry out and he asked, "What do you want?" "We want to see." He touched their eyes, and immediately they could see. Now, late in life, he was turned over to the authorities by one of his friends, a man named Judas. And as the soldiers surrounded him to arrest him, one of his friends took a sword and cut off the ear of one of the authorities' servants. Jesus said, "No more of this." He touched the servant's ears and healed him. Well, who is this young man? Now, that's all we have for today's 5:30 report. But now, let's ask a few questions. What if you heard that tomorrow afternoon at 5:30? The last 3 years, this young man from Israel has been doing these things. What would you be thinking? Is he a magician? Is he a inventor? Is he a doctor? What's with him? Is he believable? Is this just some report that they dreamed up? Now, we've heard these stories all our life. We accept the fact that it happened 2,000 years ago. But if we hear it by David Muir at 5:30, it typically is believable. A lot of you are old enough to remember Walter Cronkite. A few young ones probably don't. If Walter Cronkite said it, you could hang your hat on it. And I think David Muir is the same. So again, let's get back to the first question I asked. Whoop. What if? I got the slides out of order. What if? What question can you ask with what if? What if what you just heard is the beginning, second coming? Now, let's see. Are you ready? Now, I did bring a Bible verse. My wife insisted that I have a Bible, so I brought a Bible. Get back up here. And I'll tell you how I came by this Bible verse. A lot of you know I was in the hospital about 5 weeks ago because I had a concussion. And while there, a young man named Tony, easy to remember, came in, and he gave me, he worked at the hospital, He gave me a cross. And on the cross, it's engraved. It says Luke 9:23. I didn't know what Luke 9:23 said, and I still can't quote it, but I know what the gist of it is. And I'm going to show you. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. I think that's how we get ready. Now, we're going to proceed with the service. That is all of my report for today.